Hey guys, Ryan Howitzer here. Just so you know, the following episode is not only an opportunity for me to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, but it's also kind of a jab at 1930s culture. That being said, I may say things that might offend some people out there. Now, I tried to keep it as tame as I possibly could, but I had to put certain things in there for the joke to work. So if you're offended, please accept my sincerest apologies. I did not mean to offend you. I'm just trying to make everybody laugh. So I hope you all enjoy it. Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Howitzer and you're on the line of fire. Now you may be wondering, why on earth is Ryan Howitzer smoking? Why is this video in black and white? And what in the Sam Hill is wrong with his voice? Now I'll tell you, first of all, this is a fake cigarette. Don't worry about my health, I'm not a mook, I know smoking's bad for me. And the reason this video's in black and white and I'm talking in this ridiculous voice is to get in the spirit of the movie we're going to be looking at, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, directed by Cary Conran, was released in 2004. The movie is a digital backlot film, kind of like Sin City, in that everything is 3D animated in except for the actors. Now, a couple interesting things about this movie. It only took 26 days to shoot, which is amazing. Another interesting thing was that this is Cary Conran's first movie. Now, is this movie a comic book movie? Technically not. It's not based on any comic book. But this is my show, we'll do what I want, and if you complain, I'll suck you right in the mouth. The real reason that we're looking at this movie is not just because I like it. We're looking at it because it's almost comic book prehistory. A lot of the influences of this movie are German Expressionism and the 1930s pulp element. And that's pretty much what influenced comic books as well. We're going to be looking at a lot of movies like this, including Dick Tracy, The Shadow, and The Phantom. But we'll get to those later. For now, let's get into the review. This movie has a really great score. It's very reminiscent of the 1930s. Like a lot of the movie. It also has kind of a John Williams sound to it, which is fitting considering that they were very influenced by Indiana Jones when making this movie. We open on a Zeppelin because this is an alternate past movie. On board we see a man place 2 vials into a briefcase. The Zeppelin docks in New York City and we see that it's the Hindenburg 3. Say, that's a nice-looking dirigible, aside from the fact that it was made by those dirty Jerrys. The man with the briefcase is Dr. Vargas. He instructs one of the crew of the Hindenburg 3 to deliver the case to a Dr. Walter Jennings. Then Dr. Vargas vanishes. We discover that he was being followed, and then we see in a very creepy and also very 30s shot that his name is being crossed off of a list. We then cut to a newspaper where Polly Perkins, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, is writing a story about missing German scientists. Oh, Polly Perkins, what a doll, I'll tell you what... I'm sorry, I've just been informed that I'm not allowed to call girls dolls anymore. Polly receives a package containing a ticket to a movie and a note that tells her to come alone. Her editor isn't too happy about her taking risks, though. Polly goes to the Radio City Music Hall where the movie is being shown, and we see that the movie is The Wizard of Oz. Ah, The Wizard of Oz, what a picture! We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Polly spots a shadowy figure enter the theater and follows him. She sits next to him, and it's Dr. Jennings. And guess what? He knows who's the next scientist to be taken. Jennings tells Polly about Unit 11, a research group he was a part of after World War I, and reveals that he's next to be taken by a man named Totenkopf.
Me? He's coming for me.
Who? Who's coming?
Totenkopf. It's Totenkopf.
Air raid sirens go off and everyone evacuates the theater. Polly sees blueprints left on the ground by Jennings and picks them up. Outside, people are looking at the sky and we see an army of giant robots descending on the city. Polly calls her editor and asks him to look up Totenkopf and Dr. Jennings. Her editor tells her to get out. Polly then does a War of the Worlds homage and runs.
I can see something now coming into sight above the Palisades. They're crossing 6th Avenue. 5th Avenue. They're 100 yards away.
Polly.
Come on, Chief. You should know you can't tell a broad like that what to do. I've just been informed that broad is even more offensive than doll. I apologize. Polly stays around to get pictures, and the police try in vain to shoot the robots. An officer realizes this isn't working, and he calls for, and I quote, everything they've got. Then we see somebody call for Sky Captain. We cut to a plane in the sky, and Sky Captain, played by Jude Law, says that he is on his way. In the city, Polly nearly gets herself killed. A few times. Then we see Sky Captain arrive and try to take out the robots with his machine guns. That doesn't work for him, so he stretches a line across 2 buildings. That also doesn't work for him. Finally, he just puts a mine on one of their feet, and that seems to work out fine, but he only takes out one. All the robots are suddenly called away by a mysterious signal, and then they fly. We then get the first hint that Sky Captain and Polly actually knew each other.
Polly.
Joe.
Now these robots should look familiar to you. That's because they're based on the design from the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons. And boy is it a great design. We then get a really cool news montage filled with 30s radio voices like mine that tells us about similar occurrences around the world. Then we cut to Sky Captain returning to his private military base filled with soldiers and weapons. Seriously, this guy makes Blackwater look like a bunch of frat boys. He asks where Dex is. Dex, played by Giovanni Ribisi, is testing out a laser gun. He sees a robot being brought in from the city and spews some 30s pop culture. Just in case you thought nerdy sidekicks were something the 80s invented, we came up with it first. Dex shows Sky Captain a frequency that he thinks is being used to control the robots. Dex is instructed to find out anything he can about the robot. Sky Captain returns to his office to take care of his stomach ache and finds that Polly has let herself in. Now all of you out there weren't even a twinkle in the milkmaid's eye back in my day, so I'll go ahead and tell you what just happened. He was drinking milk of magnesia. That's what we men used to drink back when we had a stomach ache. None of that Tums or that mamby-pamby Pepto-Bismol. I've just been informed that the word mamby-pamby is also offensive. I'm starting to wonder how you 21st century people talk. We then find out that Sky Captain's real name is Joe, and that Dex was the one who let her in. The two talk about events from 3 years ago when Polly somehow caused Joe to be locked in a Manchurian slave camp, and she suspected him of cheating on her. Let that be a lesson to all you young boys out there. Don't go fooling around with dames or you'll end up in a Manchurian slave camp. Oh, you mean dames is offensive too? How am I supposed to talk? How am I supposed to do this review if you won't let me say anything? Joe pulls a gun and Dex walks in. Now you may be thinking this is a tad extreme, but what you don't know is that back in the day, all negotiations were done at gunpoint. For example, subscribe to my channel or I'll pump your guts full of lead. Joe tells Dex to escort Polly off the base, and she shows Joe the blueprint. Joe and Dex then take her to a hangar where they have several robots. We find out that these robots have been attacking around the world and for quite some time. Polly tells them about Unit 11 and Totenkopf. They notice that all the robots have Unit 11 insignias on them. Joe and Polly then agree to help each other, but Joe has some stipulations, which Polly immediately violates. So Joe and Polly decide to go into the city to check out Dr. Jennings' lab. The two share some romantic banter that's very much in the spirit of the 1930s.
Thanks for saving my life today, by the way.
Oh. Were you down there?
You missed me too. How nice.
Once they arrive at Dr. Jennings' lab, they find that nobody is there. Joe wants to scale the building to an open window, but Polly decides to break in with a rock. They find the place ransacked and begin looking around, and they find some really weird stuff, like a miniature elephant in a jar.
All right, Polly. No more games. What the hell is going on?
I was hoping you could tell me.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are not on Reefer. You did just see a very tiny elephant. They see a very wounded Dr. Jennings stumble into the room, and Joe investigates where he came from. He ends up fighting with a woman in a black hood. He loses the fight and she gets away, but he does find the briefcase from Dr. Vargas. Let me tell you, that's one tough skirt. Oh, you've got to be kidding me! Jennings is dying, and he passes 2 vials, the ones from the beginning of the movie, to Polly, and then he dies. Polly slips them in her pocket and chooses not to tell Joe about the vials. More air raid sirens go off, and Joe returns to the base. We then see that the base is under attack. Joe once again takes to the skies, but this time he begrudgingly drags Polly along with him. Dex goes to the radio and tries to find the signal again. He instructs Joe not to shoot the machines attacking because one of them has the signal. This creates a bit of an awkward moment for Joe.
Come in, Dex. Look, whatever you do, don't shoot.
Okay.
You shot it, didn't you?
Yes.
Joe follows the machine all the way to the city, and Dex tries to map out the signal. We find out that the robots were after the city's generators, and the flying machines are coming back for them. Fancy flying ensues as Joe chases the signal bot, and Polly is a backseat flyer.
Go left.
Sit back, Polly.
There's a shortcut down Broadway. You can catch him on 42nd Street. I know these streets like the back of my hand. Go left!
Joe is hit as he flies into a construction zone. The flying segments in this movie are really good. Joe catches up to the signal bot and leads the ships out over water. Dex pinpoints the location of the signal, but he's attacked by robots. He fights back with his laser gun, but he's captured by them, and the hooded woman is there as well. Joe dives straight for the water to lose the robots, and we see that his plane does in fact go underwater. He didn't tell Polly that, though. Joe emerges from the water and flies towards the completely destroyed base. Joe and Polly search the base for Dex and run into robots. Joe shoots one in the eye and kills it. The robots close in on Joe and Polly, but are called away by the signal. Polly finds a gum wrapper on the ground, and Joe finds Dex's laser gun. Joe's lamenting the fact that he wasn't able to hear what Dex was saying, but then Polly points to the ceiling, and we see that before he was taken, Dex stuck the location to the ceiling with the gum. Joe and Polly fly off to the location, and Polly reads through Vargas's journals, which reveal that Totenkopf was a scientific prodigy who disappeared years ago after it was rumored that he had begun building a doomsday device. Polly also finds the supply logs from Unit 11 that contain all the items stolen from around the world.
By 17, he had already received 2 doctorates and was one of the most highly regarded minds of his day. 1 year after his disappearance, ominous rumors began circulating, whispers that Totenkopf had begun work on what was darkly hinted to be a doomsday device.
So it was those dirty Krauts all along. Well, that just tells you. You can never trust a Chinaman or a German. Oh, that's offensive too! Joe flies over the map Indiana Jones style and lands in Nepal. They meet up with Kaji, an old friend of Joe's who's helping them in exchange for Vienna sausages. Ew. Polly doesn't trust him. They look at the maps and discover that the transmission was coming from Shambhala, or as we know it now, Shangri-La. Polly sends a telegraph to her editor, and they trek across the mountains.
Editor Paley, this may be the last message you received from me. We've tracked a radio signal to Nepal in search of Dr. Totenkopf.
Hey, now I'm pretty sure that a telegraph does not include a voice message. And also you didn't say stop after any of those sentences. What's the matter with you, Polly? They come across some kind of abandoned mining outpost and decide to investigate. Joe finds a Geiger counter and discovers that the entire mine is radioactive. They look for Polly, who is attacked by Kaji's men. See what I mean? You can't trust a Asian fellow. Oh, what do you mean it's still offensive even if I change the word for it? They want the vials that Joe doesn't know about. Polly gives them up, and the two are locked in the vault full of dynamite. This leads to more than just an awkward situation.
I don't know.
You expect me to believe that?
I'm telling the truth, Joe. Dr. Jennings gave them to me just before he died. He said that the world would end and the countdown would begin if Totenkopf got his hands on them.
The two begin arguing and discover that, of course, there are several lit fuses leading to the dynamite. The two kinda have a moment, but then descend into arguing again.
Did you cut my fuel line?
Damn it! I didn't sabotage your lousy airplane.
Fine.
Our last moments on Earth, and this is all you have to say to me?
Could we just for once die without all this bickering?
As they prepare to die, Kaji opens the door and they run out. Polly, however, is forced to leave her film behind. This was back in the days of film, kids. These didn't exist. They escape the mine in time, but black out in the snow. Polly wakes up naked in a strange bed next to Joe, who is also naked. Kaji is with them, and he is naked as well. Men enter the room and reveal that their clothes were burnt because of the radiation, and that they will be led back down the mountain. Joe, however, reveals that they're after Totenkopf, and the man agrees to help them. Kaji tells them that the people of Shambhala were enslaved and forced to work in Totenkopf's mine. Polly only has 2 shots left at her camera. Oh, the film days. Before they're taken back down the mountain, they visit the only survivor of Totenkopf's experiments. The man gives them a staff with a star on it and tells them to follow Rana. The man then asks to be killed. Oh. Well, these Chinamen certainly These Asian fellows certainly seem to be very helpful. I guess I owe an entire people group an apology. I'm sorry, guys. Joe figures out that Rana is a star, and he draws up a map based on the staff and stars. He also indicates where they will run out of fuel. Joe says it won't be a problem, though, and he calls up a friend named Frank who works for the Royal Navy. We then get more map flying. Joe begins to run out of fuel and calls for Frankie over the radio. We then see what's essentially a shield helicarrier that Joe lands on. Then we see Frankie. She's a woman, played by Angelina Jolie, no less. It's heavily implied that she was the woman Joe was cheating on Polly with. Actually, it's more than implied, it's confirmed.
Commander Cook, meet Polly Perkins.
Polly Perkins. I've heard so much about you. It's a pleasure to finally meet the competition. It's been a long time since Nanjing, hasn't it, Joseph?
If Polly Perkins is too much of a damsel in distress for you, then Frank Cook is certainly your speed. I'll tell you, this movie sure doesn't lack in the this movie sure doesn't lack in the girl department. Is that better? Good. Running out of things to say. The station is attacked, and Frankie reveals that they found an island not on any maps. Joe asks Frankie to help him, and she refuses, until Joe reveals that Totenkopf has decks. They formulate a plan to get on the island, and Frankie alerts a squadron of amphibious planes. Joe and Polly have more witty romantic banter about Joe's takeoff, and then the planes submerge and the squadron approaches the island.
Frankie, you remember our milk run over Shanghai, don't you?
We had the target buttoned up, and he was jinxing in the flag.
Pops a rivet, thinks he's taken a hit.
And started yelling,
Protect the rabbits! Protect the rabbits!
What is it with all this Nanjing business? I want to know what happened in Nanjing. Can we have a prequel movie about Nanjing? That's all I'm asking for. Frankie picks up an enemy on sonar, and an awesome robot crab thing pops up out of the ocean floor. There happen to be several of them, in fact, and one is blocking Joe's only entrance. Frankie's squad fires on them, but that does nothing. Joe's rudder is jammed, so he's forced on a collision course with the crab. It fires missiles at Joe, which Frankie intercepts. To give Joe cover, she charges the crab and ejects at the last second, causing the plane to ram into the robot along with the missiles that were following her. Joe flies into the inlet and emerges on the island. Joe and Polly get out of the plane, and Polly sees the reflection of the numbers on Joe's plane in the water. Turns out they spell Polly. Aww. The island is full of weird creatures, including dinosaurs. Joe and Polly are attacked by pterodactyls, and Joe tries to shoot them. And watch his gun change between shots.
Oh, great.
Polly is upset because she accidentally shot at the ground while running, and Joe finds it hysterical that she only has 1 shot left. We find out that Polly is basically suicidal for her camera because Joe gave it to her in Nanjing. Polly finally just asks for the truth about Frankie. She reveals that she cut Joe's fuel line, and he reveals that he was seeing Frankie for 3 months. Joe and Polly take a side entrance into Totenkopf's lab to avoid a potential saber-toothed tiger, and they see that he's building a rocket and filling it with animals. Polly wants to take a picture, but decides to save her last picture for something truly magnificent. Polly accidentally alerts the robots in the base, but they're saved by Dex and the scientists. The scientists reveal that the ship is a literal ark meant to restart life on another planet. The project is called the World of Tomorrow. The vials were the seeds of a technological utopia, as they say, that were smuggled off of the island. It's It's also revealed that once the rocket reaches a certain altitude, Totenkopf will blow up the Earth. Dex flies them to Totenkopf's chamber, which is guarded by 2 giant robots. Joe shoots the robots with Dex's laser gun. One of the doctors steps on the floor outside Totenkopf's door and is incinerated. Totenkopf then reveals himself Wizard of Oz style. He's played by a stock footage Laurence Olivier. He also reveals his motivation, and Dex unplugs him. Joe decides that he's going to test out the floor to see if anyone else gets incinerated, and he and Polly step on the floor together. And, just watch the clip, it's hilarious.
Is it safe?
Well, there's only one way to find out. I meant throw something.
They enter Totenkopf's chamber and discover his papers and that he's actually dead. However, everything is programmed to go off anyway. It's revealed that the only way to stop the rocket is on board the rocket, and Joe won't have time to escape. Polly insists on going, but Joe won't let her. They share a goodbye kiss, and Joe literally punches her out to keep her from following him. Wow, Joe, even by my standards, that's harsh. I mean, there's casual 1930s misogyny, and then there's what you just did. Joe tries to enter the rocket, but he's attacked by the hooded woman. Polly wakes up on board the ship with Dex. Joe and the woman fight while Dex escapes, only to discover that Polly somehow got away. The hooded woman gets close to killing Joe, but Polly hits her with a pipe. Then she punches Joe, and let me tell you, he deserved it. It's then revealed that the woman is in fact a robot. Joe and Polly board the rocket, and it takes off. Inside the rocket, Joe runs toward the control panel, and Polly activates the auto-release for the animal pods. Hijinks ensues, including a very Damocletian set piece with a falling sword. Joe reaches the control panel. Another Totenkopf message pops up of him reading Genesis while Joe tries to cut the wires. The woman returns, and Joe literally tasers her in the face. Then he zaps the control panel, and he and Polly find a way out. On board the HMS Not Shield, they spot the escape pods used by Joe and Polly. Polly points her camera at the animals falling from the sky, but then turns the camera on Joe and takes her last picture. And the movie ends with this great line.
It's all right. You don't have to say anything.
Lens cap.
So that's Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. There's a reason why I love this movie so much. The cast is great, the action is great, it's fun, it's exciting, it's got a cool pulp theme. All in all, it's a great movie. It's a real shame that it bombed at the box office, though, but it has developed a little bit of a cult following. If you like what you see here, I highly recommend you pick it up. All in all, Sky Captain gets a 9 out of 10 from me, because it's a great movie. Well, that's it for now, true believers. But next time, Green Lantern will be in the line of fire. I'm Ryan Howitzer, and I'll see you next time. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, aren't I?